Hello, welcome to Credit Careercast, brought to you by Highako. Today, Bob and Dave talk about the art of negotiations. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Let's get right into it.
Thanks, Joe. This is Dave Schmidt from Credit Today, and I'm here today with Bob Schultz from
Hey, David.
How are you, Bob? How's it been going?
It's going well. It's going very well, and this is a really cool topic. I like the topic of negotiating. I think it's one of the more fun things we do as collecting professionals.
That's true. It's something that it's always a little bit different. I mean, we do a lot of negotiations that are probably routine, but when you have to sort of really negotiate, then that's something different, and it spices things up a little. But let me ask you a question first, Bob. Have you observed, like I have, that a lot of people are afraid of negotiating? Is that something you've seen or experienced?
Yeah, I have, and it's kind of strange because we all negotiate. We negotiate every day. I mean, if you have a teenage child, you know how to negotiate. And
if you have a 3-year-old, you know how to negotiate.
Absolutely. And you usually lose on that one. But if you have coworkers, you negotiate. If you're a manager, you negotiate. But a lot of people feel very awkward about it if they're put in a situation. I think a lot of it is because they just don't have experience doing it. And so they feel awkward. They haven't been well trained. Maybe they had a negotiation, and because they weren't prepared, it was a total failure. And then there's a lot of people, and I've experienced them, and I thought were pretty good collectors, but when it gets down to it, they're very reluctant to get into a confrontational discussion with somebody. So I think all those things kind of inhibit some people, and there's ways of getting around that, and just really talking about the mechanics of how do you prepare for a negotiation? What do you do in different situations when you're confronted by somebody who's very uncooperative or confrontational? And I think if you understand some of the mechanics in it, it becomes a lot less intimidating for people to engage in a negotiation. So, along those lines, Dave, what do you think is, if you're going into a negotiation, what do you think is the most important thing that you should be thinking about as you prepare for a negotiating session? And in your view, what's the most important thing to consider?
Well, the thing that we run into most as credit professionals in terms of a negotiating situation, it's the customer who's having trouble paying or will not pay, or is putting you off in terms of payments. So that's sort of one type of a situation. That's a situation that we need to be prepared to handle. Other negotiations get a little more complex, but that's usually a fairly simple, straightforward type situation. And the key to going into that is you got to have all the facts straight. So you've got to know if they've raised any claims or questioned things in the past. You have to have all those details. You need to know their history. Do they take a lot of deductions? Is this a habit of theirs that they're always trying to put you off on the payments? What's their nature, and what type of a character they have? And you need to know those things. Obviously, you also need to know what you want from this, and what you're going to ask them for, which is going to be, can you send me a check today? That is where you start. But what's going to be acceptable in terms of their response to you. And the preparation is key. Understanding who you're negotiating with, that's part of the preparation. Understanding what the problem is going to be, and being prepared with possible solutions to solving that problem in a way that both sides can agree to. What do you want to add to that?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with you. I think it all starts with being prepared. And if you're a collector, you may get a phone call, and oh my gosh, I've been trying to reach this person. And don't take the call if you're not prepared, because it puts you in a very compromising position. So don't feel, that you have to engage if you're not prepared. Try to work around that. But preparation to me is where it all starts. The other thing, Dave, is, and you mentioned knowing what you're aiming for. That's really important, because people get kind of hung up on what they want, but they forget really what the end game is. And you don't want to get in that trap of this is what I want, and this is what I want. You got to go beyond that and say, what is the ultimate goal? Yeah, I want to collect the payment today, but I want to understand why it is that you're always past due, because I really want to know that I'm selling to somebody who on an ongoing basis has the ability to pay. And if I'm concerned, I want to negotiate something that'll mitigate risk possibly and enable that business relationship to continue. So it's really important to think through what, really what are my objectives. The other thing that's very important is, who the heck are you negotiating with? Make sure that if you got a difficult situation, try to get to the decision maker. First of all, the higher up you go in the organization, the easier it is to negotiate something, to have decisions made. I always refer to Eleanor Roosevelt's quote. I don't speak to somebody who only has, I'm paraphrasing it. I don't speak to anyone who only has the ability to say no. I want to talk to the person that has the ability to say yes. So you want to get to that higher level if you can. You're just wasting your time if you're only negotiating with the messenger. So I think that's also important, to really not only be prepared, know what your end game is that you're looking for, but also be sure you're talking to somebody that can make a decision. But the overarching, particularly in any business relationship, the overarching goal is to come up with some mutually agreeable solution if you can. That's in credit and collections, we're here to enhance cash flow and hopefully maximize the revenue of our company. So you want to keep that in mind. I don't have to dominate the other party. I want to come up with something that's mutually possible that works for both of them. Hopefully, doesn't always work out that way, but that's what you're aiming for. So,
Yeah,
Dave,
no, you bring up some great points there, Bob. And yeah, absolutely. You need to negotiate with the decision maker. So if you're calling on a company and you're dealing with an AP clerk or a bookkeeper, and all you're getting is no, 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 ask them, you know, what do I need to do to get paid? And if they're not able to give you the answers to that question, do I need to send the invoices to you, to someone else? How do we get everything in the process so it gets paid on time? If they can't answer that, then it's time to move up to escalate the issue to a higher person, the accounting manager, the CFO, the owner, someone like that. And you keep moving up until you find that decision maker.
yeah,
That's that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of collections, the other thing is, it's not always somebody in accounts payable. It could be somebody who's a buyer, for example, somebody who's a project manager or a program manager. They have a vested interest in making sure that there's a good relationship between your company and them. You're a key supplier, for example. So the decision maker, you really, you can leverage your salespeople to find out who the real individual is in your customer to talk to. But I've had great success actually going to buyers. And what do you mean they're not paying you? So you have to be a little bit creative, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, you can go horizontally as well as vertically on that. And the buyers, they're usually not the final decision maker, but if they want to keep the supply line open, they're going to make sure that you get paid. It's as simple as that. Great point.
Yeah, sometimes you go into weird situations, Dave. Have you ever had a screamer? Somebody who
Now,
just
I've been fortunate not never to have a screamer. I've had some really tough people, but never a screamer. Tell us what you've run into there.
Oh, I maybe it's just me, David, but yeah, I've had some real screamers. I mean, and that's a manipulative tactic. So if you're particularly if you're fairly new at this and you're trying to get something done with someone, they can use high emotions to really dissuade you or get you off track. And the key thing is listen to them, let them play it out. Just be quiet, let them vent, let them, and listen to what they're saying. Or maybe some legitimacy. Maybe they have an honest beef, or they're asking for something that you really ought to consider. But wind it down. And when somebody is speaking to you very rapidly and loud, you respond very low and slow, and that tends to bring them down. But the key there is to, why are they screaming? Why are they so upset? Are they just trying to manipulate you, or is there really something there that you need to consider? And I've had some weird ones. Also, body language. Most of these days it's usually Zoom, or not, maybe not a lot of face to face, but I think you could read some body language over a Zoom call. But let's just say that you're really, you're on a customer visit, let's say, and body language is very important. What are your observations about it? If you walk into a room, what are you looking for? What kind of messages is somebody sending with body language?
No, absolutely. If you can do it face to face, that always makes negotiations easier than just trying to do it over the phone. And yeah, and body language is total key. But you made some good points though about the person who's the screamer. You need to find out, are they just frustrated? And if that's the case, maybe there's something that has ticked them off that your company's done, or that's been a repeated issue, and you got to get to the underlying issue with it. As you said, some are just bullies, and that's something else. And bullies, you can't give in to them. You let them calm down, and again, you need to flip the script on them and listen to what they're saying. And when they're saying something to you, one of the good things to do is go back to them and rephrase what they're saying to you. So it sounded to me like you were saying, and then you rephrase it back to them and say, is that correct? Is that what you're telling me? And that very often starts a conversation then, rather than, in your case, a shouting match. Or I've run into screamers, but I've run into situations where you can't seem to get people off. They're on one point and they keep repeating it over and over again. And you rephrase that point and you try to move them on to progress the conversation along. And I think that's a real key, is to move along in a conversation. I was like it was a national bestseller back in the 80s, and I guess the second edition came out in 91. But it was a book called Getting to Yes, and it was the subtitle was Negotiation Agreement Without Giving In. It was by Robert Fisher and William Ury. And then in the 91, the second edition, Bruce Patton of the Harvard Negotiation Project joined in with it. And it's a great book. It talks about basically principled negotiations, and it provides a format. And there's actually even a workbook that goes along with it. But some of the things that we've talked about already, you separate the people from the problems. You focus on interest, not on their positions. What are they really interested in getting accomplished? What are you interested in? And finding those mutual interests. And you sort of up front, you want to set the terms of the negotiation. This is how we're going to do this. We're going to base it on these facts and this documentation, and we're going to go through it, and we'll see where we get to. And so the idea is to work together to create options that satisfy both parties. But then there's also things, the bully, the person who's more powerful, the person who simply isn't willing to negotiate. There's different things you have to do to that. And I always liked um, the concept of BATNA, BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. You need to, that's part of the preparation, going back to that. You need to have that in the back of your mind. And so what's my best alternative to a negotiated agreement? And that's going to help you to see whether you're getting to a negotiated agreement that's better than that. And if you're starting to get to something that's better than that, then you go as far as you can with that and take it. But if not, sometimes you have to walk away. Have you ever had that situation, Bob, of having to walk away?
Well, there's two ways to walk away. One is, let's just take a break. Let's come back in a few minutes. What that does is allows all these emotions that have built up just to kind of deflate, and you can come back. And when you do, it's like a lot of what you said, Dave, restating and rephrasing. When you do come back, then one way of you keep your eye on the ball. You don't let somebody who's bullying you or being loud or trying to intimidate you, don't let them get you off track. You come back and you might repeat what they're saying. Sometimes people say things that are so ridiculous that when you actually repeat it word for word, they realize, wait, I'm kind of out of line here. That's not really what I meant. But you keep on focus on what your end game is, and when you come back, one technique is to say, look, we've talked about a lot of things today. We have mutual agreement here. Like, for example, I got you on credit hold because you're not paying me, and I would love to take you off credit hold. I mean, we can agree on that, right? You want to be taken off. Yeah, we can agree on that. So, okay, that's something we agree on. So let's talk about what it's going to take to satisfy me and satisfy you, and then we can get on with our business. So you focus on the little points that you've agreed on, and you just kind of focus on the easy things to negotiate. There's a bunch of issues. And then what you do is you look back and you say, look, we've made so much progress. I know that the big issue, whatever it might be, is in front of us, but let's just keep on going. I mean, we've got a a history here of making progress. Let's just continue on, and you kind of open it up a little bit. But the first idea is, you calm people down. If it just really gets rough and confrontational, you could take a break. If it just reaches the breaking point, yeah, you got to know when to walk away. The BATNA idea is really important. It gives you an alternative stopping point. But beyond that, there's certain cases where you're just not going to come to a good end, and you walk away. And kind of getting to the body language thing, that's a form of intimidation too. Particularly if you're face to face, I've walked into situations where I sat down and the fellow is behind a desk, and his chair is very high and my chair is very low. That's a form of intimidation. Or you go into a room and you're sitting across the conference table looking into a window, and that the other person's on the other side with the sun behind their back. That's very intimidating. You can't even see them. The sun is too bright. So you want to make sure that number one, what I've always done in the old days, and some people may still do this, where you wear suits. If I was going into a meeting and I was very serious, I would wear a power suit to that meeting. So to whatever degree you can formalize your dress, that tells them you're serious. This isn't to be taken lightly. That's one thing. Try to sit at the head of the table if you can, because that's the power seat. And so if you can do that, and then watch what the other person's doing. If you're trying to negotiate, they're slumping in their chair and they're kind of distracted. They're changing the point. They're not really engaged. That really tells you that you've got to get them on track, and you certainly don't want to do those things yourself. So there's a lot of subtleties to negotiation, and that you really have to manipulate yourself, and also make sure that you're not manipulated. Have you ever, Dave, have you ever just dealt with an outright liar in negotiating?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. In collections, you get the people who will promise you anything. Yeah, I'll do it. And the fact of the matter is, you find out, after one or two times, where they make promises and break them, that okay, this is a person who's not going to be honest. And if it's the highest person in the organization, which I've run into, it's the owner lying to you. That's a problem. If it's someone lower, like we said before, you move it up. But yeah, liars, you got to confront it with it. Well, you said you would pay me on such and such a date, and so you make any commitment that they're going to make to you very specific, so that the next time you have to sit down to them, you know that they did not keep that, and that don't want to call them a liar, but you said you would pay me on Thursday the 12th, for this amount, and we got a lesser amount a week later. That's not acceptable, but you want to be able to nail them down and point out where they've fallen short on you. To go back to a couple of points you made, you want to take the emotions out of negotiations, and so that's part of your own preparation. You need to be in a state of mind where you're not going to get emotional, and you're not going to react emotionally to them, because if it's a bully, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get you to be emotional. Stick to the facts, ma'am, to quote Sergeant Go Friday. That's one thing. The other thing is, the environment is very important that you mentioned. So if they're sitting with the sun to the back of them, try to move to either side. If your chair is lower than theirs, stand up. If they have three people at the negotiation table, or going to have three people at the negotiating table, make sure you don't come alone. Make sure you have two or three people, with you. All those things, the environment is, always very important. And, what's going on in the environment is important as well.
Yeah, if you can, we're talking about face-to-face meetings here, if you can do it on your own turf. It might be very unlikely because of people have clients all over the country, but if it's at all possible, do it in your office, because you're familiar with it. You know where all your records are. If there's other people that you need to bring in to help you get through the negotiation, they're right there. So all those things are kind of important. We've talked about a number of things, in preparation and how to behave in a negotiation and so on and so forth. The poster child for me, this is going to sound a little strange, Dave. The poster child for how not to negotiate is the TV series Pawn Stars. If you watch that, the people that own the shop, they have they're making business decisions, and they know what something is worth and what they need to pay to be able to retain a profit. But if you watch that, somebody will come in with some outrageous value to whatever it is they're trying to sell to those people. And the first question is, how much do you want for this? And they just throw out a number. They don't say why. They don't justify the value. They don't really put any context to why in the heck they've come up with that price. And then if you watch it, what happens is they're typically offered half or even less. Sometimes they have somebody come in and actually evaluate what the true value is, but they'll offer half of whatever that is. And the people are okay. So they're not prepared. They're ill-informed, and they don't create a rationale for their position and their interests. And their interest is to make as much money off it as they can. But to do that, you have to be prepared, and you have to be able to justify what the value is. The same thing is in credit and collections. You have to justify your interest is to is to get paid and to retain profitable business for your company with a managed risk. That's your goal. That's your interest. And you have to be able to express the value of that to the other side so that whatever you're demanding of them has a context around it and it makes sense. So I think look at that silly TV show. It really shows you the opposite. And I think that's a lesson to people that go into a negotiation.
Well, I think you and I watch different TV, but I see the same thing when I watch Shark Tank. How often do the people come in there pitching their company, trying to get investors into it, and they overvalue it? And what a big mistake. Give them an honest value, and if the sharks think it's worth it, you're going to have them bidding against each other. And then they'll be bidding against each other to offer you a better deal. But to come in there, I've seen so many people fail in that, and it's usually because they overvalue their business. Now in credit and collections, it's pretty much what we're looking to obtain is it's the payment, the money that's sort of set for us. But how we can obtain it, there's different ways. Do I need to be paid all at once? Can we get paid in a payment plan? And make sure that we're working down the balance and we can keep some goods flowing to your company. So there's different things like that. But you got to get them in a conversation, get rid of the emotion, get them talking based on the facts. You made a commitment to buy from us at this price on these terms. Isn't that true? Isn't that on the pricing schedule agreement you signed with the sales organization? You signed the credit agreement. Don't you believe that you should stick to your agreements and start to, as you said before, you start getting wins and you build on these little wins, and then finally you can get the big win.
Yeah, that's a great point. Always go back to the document that initiated your business relationship, whether it's a contract or a purchase order, whatever it might be. We agreed at the outset that this would happen. The other thing is that's kind of important here. We talked about getting to a decision maker. Try to scope out who it is that you're talking about, what their motives are, and try to understand, because everybody in every situation, their initial reaction to a negotiation is something that is of value to them or of value to the company. And when you're talking to an individual, both of those things are going through their mind. I have to get this deal done. I have to get the product flowing again, because if I don't, the people above me are not going to, take it lightly. They're and they're not going to. My competence is on the line. So you have both the interest of the other company, your customer, and the person that you're talking to. You try to get on the table what exactly the real motives are here, and the magic words, why and why not, the magic formula, probing questions. Ask them, why is this? What are you looking for here? And try to really get down to the root of why they're not paying, for example. You go through this scenario, gosh, you're past due. We need to negotiate this, and I'm really concerned about your company's creditworthiness. So from your point of view, you want to do a credit review. You may want some form of security or a guarantee that you haven't had before, because their payments are deteriorating and you're concerned. Could be what you are looking for. And they're why is it? And if you keep asking those questions, you may get to the root cause of the problem. You're having terrible cash flow problems. Maybe they're growing too fast and they just don't have the cash flow. So if you get to the root of it, you understand the issues, that can really frame how you negotiate a solution. So
yeah, you're spot on this, and it's so important to clarify what everybody's interests are. So you need to know what your interests are. I want to extend credit with as little risk as possible. What's their interest? Well, they if they're a low level person, their interest is, I just want to do my job and get graded well, and the controller pays me to, gives me bonuses when I slow down payments. That might be their interest. I want to get my bonus by paying you a little bit slower.
Yeah, I had a really, David.
But there's one third thing before you jump in. It's what are the interests of others? So as we talked about before, the buyers or procurement in the organization, they have interest in getting new product and not having things put on hold. So, what's the interest of, other people in your organization and theirs, and that's where you can start to find the common interests and make progress.
Dave, I've got a perfect example in my experience. I won't name any names, but it was a very large company, and we were selling a critical product to that company, and they were paying us very slow. So I traveled to their headquarters with our salespeople, and we were all prepped. We all knew what we were going to offer them, and it was kind of unique. And basically, what I put on the table, along with the salespeople, was, look, we need to have you bracket payments to us within a certain time limit. And here's the deal: if you will do that over the next 12 months, where you're paying us on average at this daily cycle, and you also create, a certain level of demand with us, at the end of that 12 months, we're going to give you a significant rebate. This is all detailed out and everything. It was a significant rebate. So we did that. And they agreed. And it goes back to, people who are deceptive and not telling the truth. They just agreed to it. Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll do that. Well, we monitored it quarter after quarter, and it was not successful. They weren't paying us as agreed. And I can't remember if they met their volume requirement or not. I don't recall, but they weren't paying as agreed. So we all flew back in the final quarter, and we met with, it was procurement people and finance people, and we met. And I'll never forget this. The fellow that was in procurement, with his bonus was dependent on that rebate. He had committed to that rebate. It was very significant. And when we were in that meeting, I said, here are the facts. We laid it out. You didn't meet your commitment, so you're not getting the rebate. The guy got so tense. He didn't say anything, but he tensed all up. David, his nose started bleeding. That's a true story. He had so much on the line personally, and he agreed to something that he never intended to adhere to. And the end result was very painful for him. And it was a failed experiment. So
literally burst a blood vessel.
He literally did, right in front of everybody. He had the power seat at the end of the table.
Yeah.
And that was the result. So that was a lesson. It was a lesson. First of all, if I ever did it again, I would have much tighter milestones, maybe quarterly. But it was a guy that made a commitment he frankly never intended to keep, and there was dire consequences for him personally and for his company. So it was a great.
Well, Bob, I think that's a great story for us to end on. And unless you have some final thoughts you want to add here.
I think we've covered as best we can in a short time frame here. Hopefully, people get the idea that you did. Again, not to be repetitive, but you just want to be prepared. Whether it's 2 minutes preparation on a phone call, or hours doing research and documenting, or something that's really complex. Don't let the other side bully you or get you off track. Just keep focused with a bead right on what your end game is and some alternatives. Keep them engaged. Remember that they have to win too. And just if you do all those things, I think you're getting some real progress in negotiating successfully.
I agree. It's make it a conversation. Make it a discussion. Don't make it a confrontation, and you'll do great.
Yep. And at the end of the day, know when to walk away,
Absolutely.
like we're doing right now, David.
That does it for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.